At the class reunion, an old classmate suddenly walked up to me and asked, "Do you remember how you used to bully me in middle school?" The chatter in the room fell instantly silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. Even the live stream camera held by a hot girl with 1 million followers was pointed right at my face. It felt like the entire world was waiting for me to justify myself. I gently licked my lips and pulled out a thick notebook, over 500 pages long. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Tell me exactly when and where I supposedly bullied you. We'll verify it together." Who keeps a daily journal like that? A normal person wouldn't. But I do. Ever since I turned 50, I've suffered from persecutory delusions. I constantly feel like someone out there is trying to frame me, so I prepared for it in advance. Back in elementary school, I was falsely accused of stealing a hair clip. All it took was one person's words to paint me as a thief, and I had to prove my own innocence. That group of kids tore into me with their accusations, each word meant to crush me. I had no friends, no one stood up for me. I could only clench my teeth and swallow my tears. Eventually, the matter was forgotten. No one bothered me anymore, but no one ever gave me justice either. Since then, a scar was etched deep in my heart, one that never healed. That's when the paranoia started. I believed someone would always try to harm me. So from the age of 50, I began writing a journal. Not one of weather reports or daily emotions, but a meticulous record of every grudge, every injustice. You could call it my personal book of grievances. Its purpose? So that if someone ever falsely accused me, I could list the facts one by one and silence them. Later on, when those EQ building exercises started circulating online, I did quite a few of them. One of them asked, "If someone at a reunion suddenly accuses you of bullying them in school, how would you respond?" I skimmed over that one. Why? Because I have my book of grievances, I don't worry about absurd hypotheticals like that. But who would have thought that very EQ drill would become reality? It all started when a former middle school classmate I hadn't seen in 10 years suddenly suggested a reunion in our group chat. Since I work freelance and don't have many close friends, I agreed without thinking much of it. Just as the food was being served, a woman with short hair slowly walked into the restaurant. She was alarmingly thin, skin and bones. Even though she had put on a full face of makeup, she still looked worn out, exhausted. Her smile was stiff and fake, like she was wearing a mask. Her eyes flitted about, calculating, cold, and distant. Having studied a bit of physiognomy, I decided it was best not to get involved with someone like her. It wasn't until she introduced herself that I realized she was my old deskmate, Claire Simmons. We were called deskmates, but honestly, we didn't sit together for long. Our class assigned seats based on academic performance, and the seating chart was updated every month. I never sought Claire out, but somehow, she was the one who came to me. Among the attendees that day was Kelly Tran, the former class gossip who had now become a popular influencer with a massive following. The moment she entered the venue, she started live streaming. She had always been good with words, even back in school, she could talk endlessly, gossiping about everything under the sun. She sat right in front of me, chatting away as she ate. That's when Claire walked straight up to me, holding a glass of red wine, directly in the frame of the livestream camera. Her intentions were far from kind. There was a barely perceptible sneer on her face, and her tone dripped with sarcasm. "Eva," she said, sweetly. "Do you remember how you used to bully me in middle school?" At that moment, Claire could have passed for the lead in a Korean drama. The once pitiful, bullied girl who had transformed into a graceful swan, now returning to confront her tormentor. Boldly provoking them, relishing the look of shock on their face, before pretending to forgive them with fake magnanimity. This was a highly sensitive accusation. As soon as she spoke, the entire room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at me, their expressions mixed with curiosity, pity, and judgment. Kelly swept her camera around the room, then zoomed in on my face. Within seconds, thousands of viewers flooded into the livestream. The comments began pouring in. Bullying someone is unforgivable. Just look at her face, clearly a mean girl. I was bullied too, I know exactly how that feels. This is just like one of those EQ test questions. Damn, that's cold, especially at a reunion. If you're defending the bully, get out of here. If she didn't do it, then let her prove it. Wait, are you seriously sympathizing with the bully? Maybe you bullied people too? I admit, for a brief second, my expression faltered. But it wasn't out of fear or guilt. I was wondering if Claire was performing a scripted drama. So I asked her again, are you sure? When exactly did I bully you, Claire? She bit her lip slightly, looked up at the ceiling, and took a shaky breath, as if holding back tears. You locked me in the girls' bathroom and sprayed water all over me. You left my science project in the teacher's lounge overnight. You snapped every pen in my pencil case before the big test, so I couldn't write. But hey, why am I even saying all this? It's been so long. I've let it go. She smiled with exaggerated graciousness. Eva, I'm not here to hold a grudge anymore. Let's just move on. Come on, have a drink with me, let's bury the hatchet. She tilted her glass slightly. I stared at the red wine swirling inside, silent. If I clinked glasses with her now, wouldn't that be the same as admitting I was a bully? I calmly extended one finger and gently pushed her glass to the side. Then I stood up, looking Claire Simmons straight in the eye. I'm not someone who accepts vague accusations without proof. At first, I thought you were joking. But now I see, you're dead serious. Claire, I honestly can't compete with geniuses like you on the stage of make-believe. It was obvious she had come prepared. Everything she'd just done was a setup, a trap to corner me with no way out. There was no way she truly came to reconcile, not with those words and that smug tone. Eva, she sneered, looks like it's true what they say online, villains never realize they've done anything wrong. What gives you the right to act so high and mighty? For 10 years straight, I've had nightmares, always with your ugly face in them. Do you even know what kind of psychological trauma you caused me? Her eyes turned red, a tear slid down silently. Her fingers trembled, her body wavered slightly, her facial muscles twitching like she was enduring unbearable pain. Anyone watching might feel swayed. But not me. I straightened my back, looked her in the eye, and replied with unwavering calm. Claire, I've never done anything wrong to you. If you want to be an actress, don't use me as your rehearsal prop. You're a grown adult. You should know, if you make an accusation, you'd better be ready to prove it. Words alone aren't evidence. And if a few dramatic tears are enough to decide who's right, then maybe we should just merge the legal system with Hollywood. Claire raised her voice, giving an Oscar-worthy performance right out of a K-drama. Don't you dare try to intimidate me, she snapped. You threatened me back then, and now you're trying it again? You think I'm still that weak little girl you used to bully? You know very well how hard it is to prove these things. But the bullying? It happened. That's a fact. Her spit flew into my face. I wiped it off slowly. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward and whispered sharply into my ear. Eva, I gave you an out. You should have taken it. You really think you can talk your way out of this? Why not? I said coldly. I pulled a thick journal, over 500 pages, from my bag and threw it directly in her face. If she wanted to humiliate me in public, then she'd better be ready to lose her dignity in front of thousands. Take a good look. Every single event from the last 10 years, documented, time-stamped, and backed up. Memory fades. Ink doesn't. You claimed I locked you in the bathroom and poured water on you? Let's go to the tape. I had already had the journal digitized, every page. I projected the records right onto the reunion hall wall. March 11th. Claire Simmons hadn't finished her math homework. Afraid of being scolded by the teacher, she didn't return to the dorm and instead locked herself in the girls' bathroom. She tried to drench herself in cold water to fake illness so she could skip the next day's test. Unfortunately, she accidentally locked herself inside the bathroom stall. No one knew what had happened. She refused to say a word. Only I knew the truth, because that day I was constipated and happened to be in the stall right next to hers. Our homeroom teacher can back me up. I sat so long my legs went numb, and she had to help me out of the stall. May 27th, right before our academic track exams, Claire Simmons sneaked into the teacher's office intending to steal the answer key. But she didn't expect Mr. Douglas, our homeroom teacher, to be sleeping in his office that night after getting kicked out of the house by his wife. Claire panicked and called me, asking me to distract him, since I was the student aide for history class. I still have the call history saved on my external hard drive. Every word I recited was sharp, logical, and painfully precise. Each line from my notes landed like a blow, striking Claire in front of the crowd. She couldn't take it anymore and suddenly interrupted me. "Enough. That was 10 years ago and you seriously still keep all this stuff? You're insane, malicious." But the word malicious coming out of her mouth sounded weak and hollow, stripped of all force. Even she was starting to panic, biting her lip, not knowing what to say or do next. Meanwhile, the livestream chat exploded. "Holy crap, who keeps records like this? This is like reading a historical chronicle, not a diary. I didn't even take notes this carefully in AP US history. Sis literally came prepared with a full legal defense archive. Thought we were watching glory in the shadows, but this is lost in the dark." You'd think that would have been the end of it. But no, Claire wasn't ready to give up just yet. "Okay, maybe the past is a little blurry. I might not remember everything clearly. But what about the time you abused that stray dog?" She turned directly to the livestream camera, eyes full of tears, and began telling her tragic story. "That little dog's name was Lucky. Every day after school, I brought him food. But one day, Lucky didn't come running to me anymore. It was her, that cruel, heartless woman. I saw her with my own eyes. She made Lucky collapse, kicked him, beat him, poured water down his throat. In the end, Lucky died in the freezing cold that winter. All that's left is a tiny grave at the edge of the school grounds. Don't you dare deny it." The school had security cameras running 24/7. She wiped away a tear, but her lips curled ever so slightly into a smug, victorious smile. She knew what she was doing. This was a master move. Because compared to bullying people, animal abuse is even harder to refute. The only witness was the dog, and it was dead. The local veterinary clinic had closed down years ago, so there was no way to retrieve medical evidence. I thought my last rebuttal would help the livestream audience snap out of it. But instead, another wave of keyboard warriors stormed in, spamming the comments. "She's definitely unhinged. Who the hell keeps a grudge log like that? Creepy AF. And now there's the dog abuse angle too? The dog did nothing wrong. Go short hair queen, don't let the manipulators win." They called me mentally twisted. Fine. I admit it, I'm not exactly the most optimistic person, and keeping a vengeance journal isn't something most people do. But calling me a pervert and accusing me of animal cruelty? That's where I draw the line. Claire Simmons seemed relieved, thinking everything had shifted back in her favor, just as she'd planned. But what she didn't know. I still had one last card to play. So what if there were no witnesses? That doesn't mean I didn't have evidence. I've always known that words could be twisted. Writing alone might not be persuasive enough. Which is why I also kept over 1,000 gigabytes of video footage. That dog, Lucky, was aggressive as hell. Every time I gave him medicine, it was a full-on wrestling match. Trying to get him to the vet? It was practically a street fight. I had no choice but to knock him out, for his own safety. I quickly connected my phone and started screen mirroring. The restaurant's Wi-Fi was great, and within seconds, a video from 10 years ago appeared on the big screen. In the footage, I faced the camera and spoke seriously. It's 6 p.m. on the 20th. I'm about to try and catch Lucky, the limping stray dog on campus, and take him to the vet. The video showed me cautiously approaching the dog. The moment I got near, Lucky bared his teeth and growled. "I've got no choice," I said to the camera. "His leg wound is so deep I can see the bone. He needs stitches ASAP. But he won't cooperate. Clearly, there's no trust at all between him and humans. I'm going to hide the sedative in a hot dog." After swallowing the hot dog, Lucky immediately lay still. The frame shook slightly as I lifted him up, getting ready to carry him to the vet. On the stairwell, I ran into a girl with short hair coming down. As soon as she saw me, she pointed and screamed. "I saw what you did. You knocked out the dog. If you're hungry, go buy food, why try to eat a dog?" In the video, I froze for a moment. Then, furious, I turned to her and let her have it. "Are you brain dead? Try wringing the water out of that soaked sponge you call a brain. It's 90 degrees out and the sun couldn't even dry that nonsense." Back then, I was a rebellious girl, there was no way I'd tolerate that kind of blatant slander. Claire, frozen, speechless, just stood there like a statue. I gave her a cold glare, then walked off at my own pace. Just before reaching the school gate, I turned back to the camera and said clearly, "That lunatic back there is Claire Simmons, my old desk mate. Always crying, always complaining, every little thing was bullying to her. She never studied, always walking around with red, puffy eyes and snot dripping down her face, pretending to be tough while playing the victim. I had predicted this long ago. I knew that one day she'd accuse me of abusing that dog. And when that day came, I'd release the video. And guess what? 10 years later, Claire Simmons really did go public and claim I abused a dog. When the footage reached that part of the video, the entire room froze, like statues made of stone. Kelly Tran was so shocked she clutched her face and screamed. The livestream viewer count hit 500,000. Another classmate literally jumped out of their seat in excitement. "It's trending. Front page. Viral. This is it. Fame just fell out of the sky." The chaos hit so fast, no one had time to prepare. All our old classmates immediately transformed into on-site reporters, whipping out their phones to go live. The party room erupted with cheers. "Let's go. Smash that like button, everyone. This is better than TV." The chat exploded like a circus. "Thought she was anxious, turns out she's a damn psychic. America's own prophetess. Wait a sec, that short-haired girl looks familiar. Wasn't she on some mediation show once?" But any faint whispers of doubt were quickly drowned in a sea of memes and laughing emojis. Claire stood there like a wax figure, eyes darting around wildly, as if her brain was about to crash. At that moment, she could have backed down. Sure, it would have been humiliating, but at least she could have salvaged a shred of dignity. But no. Claire was the type who couldn't stand losing face. She'd always been like that. Even the tiniest loss, and she'd go nuclear. We barely shared a desk for a few weeks, and I'd already tried my best to keep my distance. But she always found ways to drag me back into her chaos. Sometimes I seriously thought she'd be the death of me. From the moment she showed up tonight, I still haven't figured out. Was she just trying to ride the livestream fame wave? Or was she actually losing her mind? Claire is the perfect example of someone so hypersensitive that the whole world had to bend to her emotional whims. "That video was clearly edited," she blurted. "If you can prove that it's the original, uncut version, then I'll admit I falsely accused you." There it is. Claire Simmons, the girl who never learned the meaning of the word back off. I wasn't even rattled earlier, and now? I was completely calm. "Claire," I said, voice steady, "you've been screaming at me to show proof, and I just did. Meanwhile, all you've done is spin a good story. Let me remind you of something. If you're the one making accusations, then you're the one who has to provide evidence. Didn't you take high school English? You know how persuasive essays work, right? If you're gonna make a claim, you need to back it up. You say I edited the video? Fine, then prove it." Show us the evidence that this video was altered in any way. You said I abused a dog. You said there were security cameras at the school. So where's the footage? Everyone knows it's been 10 years, those surveillance files were overwritten long ago. Who's going to dig that up now? To be honest, I didn't even need to go this far with you. Someone like you? Even if you reported this to the cops, they wouldn't even bother with your case. Backed into a corner with nowhere to run, Claire Simmons began stepping back, her body trembling violently, whether from fear or rage, it was hard to tell. She curled in on herself, sobbing uncontrollably. Is this what you wanted, Eva? She gasped. You're still as cold and ruthless as ever. Always pushing people to the edge. You won't be satisfied until I die, huh? Only if I die will people take what I say seriously? What the hell is wrong with this world? Finally, a few classmates who had held their tongues couldn't take it anymore. We've been watching all this time, and you still haven't shown a single shred of evidence. First you say Eva abused a dog. Then you say she bullied you. What's next? Got a script or something? Yeah, Eva's a little blunt, but there's nothing wrong with her as a person. She helped me understand homework all the time when we were in school, someone chimed in. Alright, enough, Claire. If you keep going, you're just embarrassing yourself. What is this, blackmail now? Suddenly, Claire clutched her head and let out a shrill scream. She looked like she was about to transform into a banshee. After a few more wails, she seemed to latch onto a new idea. Eyes bloodshot, she started pointing at everyone in the room, cursing wildly without any sense of reason or target. You're all siding with her because you bullied me too back then. You think I'm lying? What about when you formed cliques and talked trash behind my back? The livestream had already started to drift to other topics. But that outburst? It snapped everyone right back into focus. Wait, what? Is everyone the villain now? I don't know, the way she's crying doesn't seem fake. What if she really is the victim here? Eva came way too prepared. Maybe this was all rigged. Only bullies would stick together like that. What if Eva faked all that evidence because she was afraid of being exposed? Poor short-haired girl, one comment read. She must have worked up all that courage to speak up, and then bam, taken down by some manipulative queen bee. I still believe no one would put their whole life on display and expose old wounds to tens of thousands of people unless they were truly in pain. She was crying, for God's sake. And just like that, the old narrative came rushing back. Even victims are to blame. When I couldn't prove my innocence, I was ridiculed. Now that I can, I'm still criticized for being too prepared. The hashtag Claire collapse shot straight to the top of the trending list. Claire's unhinged rant at the entire reunion had ignited a storm of backlash. Around the room, our classmates all frowned at her, eyes full of anger, disappointment, and disbelief. Next to me stood Ethan Chen, a former classmate who had since become a successful entrepreneur and now owned a small business. He nearly saw his reputation tank and his business suffer because of this mess. There was no way he could stay quiet. Claire Simmons, he said firmly, maybe you should take a moment to really ask yourself, who actually wronged you? Other classmates began to chime in too. At most, it was just some school drama. It wasn't bullying. Don't blow things out of proportion. But Claire spun around and pointed at the last girl who had spoken, practically screaming like she'd lost her mind. It was you, Julie Vu. You once joked that my mom was a streetwalker. Because of that, she lost her job. My mom was a decent woman, gentle, hardworking. That rumor destroyed her. She was never the same again. Then she turned to Ethan. And you, Ethan, don't act innocent. You helped spread that rumor across the classrooms. You think I don't remember how everyone pointed and whispered behind my back? Julie Vu, Ethan Chen. Mia Chu. You were all part of it. Why don't you step up now and say it to my face? Did you say it or not? At this point, the internet audience took a hard turn. Some viewers started expressing sympathy for Claire, discussing the real-life damage rumors can cause. Others pointed out that rumors from back then were nearly impossible to prove, since there were no digital traces like we have today. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Claire's moves were deliberate and calculated. First the dog abuse accusation, now the damaging rumor claims. Each topic was emotionally charged, hard to disprove, and powerful enough to stir public outrage with just the right amount of storytelling. This is the age of instant judgment, where people are burdened by pressures from all directions. In truth, most public callouts like this aren't about facts, they're about people needing somewhere to dump their emotions. Claire, knowingly or not, had become that vessel. The truth? Only a few cared about it. But she clearly thought I couldn't defend myself, because this time, the accusations came from her mouth, not a document. The classmates she named were now visibly sweating, their faces tight with fear. They wanted to refute her, but had nothing concrete to rely on. Once again, I had to step in. "Claire Simmons," I said, calm and steady. "Whatever game you're trying to play, just know I could dismantle your scheme before, and I can do it again. I, Eva Harper, live to build a life with no cracks to exploit." "Ethan, please turn to page 123 in my journal." Hearing even a glimmer of hope, Ethan scrambled over and quickly flipped to the page. I began to read aloud. September 1st. I was trying to review test prep, but Claire Simmons was causing a ruckus again. She was gossiping with some girls from another class, telling them that Julie Vu had been seen repeatedly going in and out of Mr. Clark's office, inventing a full-on scandal about an affair between a student and a teacher. I closed the journal with a snap. The kind of person who spreads filthy rumors is the lowest of the low. Julie Vu was the top math student in our class, and Claire Simmons had always been jealous that Mr. Clark never gave her private tutoring. Not long after, rumors about an inappropriate relationship between Julie and Mr. Clark spread like wildfire throughout the school. Julie ended up missing several days of school, and Mr. Clark was placed under investigation. I was just about to continue when Claire cut me off. "Eva Harper, why are you even meddling in other people's business?" Her eyes locked onto my journal like she wanted to lunge forward and rip it to pieces. By now, several classmates had stood up and positioned themselves between me and Claire, forming a protective barrier around the speaker and the evidence. Claire, drenched in sweat, glared furiously at the human shield before her and shouted, "You're all framing me. This is slander." Someone in the middle smirked and replied, "Are you talking about yourself?" Claire tried to peek over their shoulders, rising on her toes to see how far I had read, but no one let her through. Ethan Chen had already flipped the journal to the next page, and I kept reading, loud and clear. Mr. Clark was reinstated after the investigation, and Julie returned to school. But Claire's mother couldn't accept the outcome. She stormed into the school administration, insisting Claire's poor grades were due to discrimination. She even threatened to file a complaint with the Department of Education, accusing the school of covering up for Mr. Clark. But Mr. Clark tutored students for free. He never accepted a dime. And it wasn't just Julie, several students got one-on-one help. September 7th, Claire called Mia Chu's grandmother, a woman who suffered severe burns, a witch. Mia was so furious she clapped back and called Claire's mom a barmaid. September 8th, Claire screamed, cried, and said she wanted to drop out. No one really responded. One day, Ethan Chen was chatting about video games with a few friends. When he glanced over at Claire and laughed, she suddenly burst into tears. To me, Ethan was always a bit of a goofball who picked the skimpiest dressed characters in every game. Claire must have thought he and the other boys were laughing at her. She ran back to her seat, buried her face in her arms, and cried uncontrollably. One time, she asked me, "Eva, do you believe all those rumors about me?" I told her honestly, "I don't even know what people are saying about you. What I do know is you started the rumor about Mr. Clark and Julie." She shouted at me after that. And I remember thinking, this girl isn't just unstable, she's dangerous. One day, she's going to set me up. That's why I made the decision, back then, to document everything, from start to finish. And now, reading from my book of grudges, I had shocked the internet, part 2. Another prophecy, spot on. People online were buzzing. No wonder she documented everything, even other people's issues. She knew one day she'd get dragged into it too. And honestly, I believe that. Because the entire journal was written with a level of detachment and fairness, no insults, no bias. She had held everyone accountable, equally. The 3 classmates mentioned, Ethan Chen, Mia Chu, and Julie Vu, sighed. You didn't spare us either, huh? Ethan muttered. Still better than being falsely accused of being a bully. Claire clenched her fists in frustration, her jealousy boiling over. Well, I wasn't wrong, Claire Simmons snapped. You really did talk behind my back. That single sentence was enough to make the other 3, Julie Vu, Mia Chu, and Ethan Chen, form an instant alliance. Julie stepped forward. Then what about the rumors you started about me? What's your excuse for that? Mia added. Claire, if you apologize to my grandmother, I'll apologize to your mom. Ethan shrugged. That look I gave you back then? I wasn't staring, I was scared of you. You're the kind of person that makes everyone feel unlucky just by being around. The truth is, people can only process a limited amount of information. And they're rarely interested in boring truths. That's why spreading a lie only takes a whisper, but correcting it feels like running a marathon. My method? Turn complicated truth into something simple. Make the boring parts dramatic, so people feel like they're watching a juicy series, not doing a mental puzzle. And even if they still don't get it, that's okay. There are always dozens of online class reps ready to summarize everything for them. The TLDR that was now circulating. Short-haired girl exaggerated a classmate conflict into full-blown school bullying. She spread false rumors about students and teachers. Her mom tried to sue a teacher just because her daughter had bad grades. Kinda scary when you think about it, right? 10 years later, and she came back right when the hot girl started live streaming. If this had happened to anyone else, not even 1,000 mouths could talk their way out of it. Claire rolled her eyes again. I could tell, she was about to drop another twist. I was really starting to wonder. How deep does her hatred for me run? What did I ever do to make her so determined to drag me down? At this point, it had to be her final card. And sure enough, just as I expected, Claire dropped her manic energy and suddenly looked calm, eerily calm. The kind of calm that comes when someone knows they're cornered but still refuses to go down without swinging. Eva Harper, I bet your fans have no idea that your whole sweet, healing persona is nothing but a brand. In reality, you're dark. You're terrifying. Isn't that right, you Golden Girl author? With just one pen, you turned the victim into the villain. You let a fragile girl like me get shredded by the internet. And now you want to say your stories are pure fiction? Then explain this. Why does the villain in your book look exactly like my neighbor's sister? I could feel the tension around me change. Friends nearby began pulling out their phones, all doing the same thing. Googling my pen name and my published stories. My chest tightened. That moment, that exact moment, was the one I dreaded most. A sharp ringing filled my ears, and my head began to spin. Claire's voice, now cruel and steady, pierced through the noise. My neighbor's sister was beaten so badly by her husband, her face was permanently disfigured. And in your story, the villain? She's disfigured too. My neighbor's sister was an orphan. And your villain? She's an orphan too. The real woman was a domestic abuse victim, Claire said coldly. But in your story, she's written like a twisted wreck who deserved what happened to her. You're exactly the kind of writer who distorts reality, who panders to men and hates women. You're disgusting. Just having my pen name exposed was terrifying enough. But what was worse, was that she knew exactly what a writer fears most. Being misunderstood. Misogynist. Pick me. Internalized misogyny. That trio of buzzwords is the most efficient way to cancel any female author today. Take a few lines out of context. Twist them. Frame them the right way. And that's all it takes to drench someone in digital filth. Being misunderstood is the fate of any creator. But for me? That phrase didn't cut it anymore. I had to fight back. Within minutes, the comment sections under my posts and stories were flooded with hate mobs. People didn't even click to read. They just rushed in to tear me apart. This man-loving author writes this well? Hope she experiences every single trauma she's ever put her characters through. This writing's like a third grader's essay on their cat. My chicken could peck out better prose. Trash heroine, trash story, trash author, brain full of crap, and her words smell like it too. I've been attacked before, many times. And I admit, even with a stack of journals thick as bricks, I couldn't fully escape the trap of proving my own innocence. I used to try explaining myself, clarifying my intent, walking people through the setup, the foreshadowing, the deeper layers. This scene had a reason. That character arc was planted chapters ago. But later, I finally understood. The more I explained, the more I fell right into the trap. The self-justification trap that surrounds every creator, one you can never truly avoid. From that day on, I learned to accept it, to face it, and most importantly, to live through it calmly. So no, what kept me composed wasn't the brick-thick journals. It was my mindset, one stronger than any comment section. As I stood there with a calm face, completely unmoved by the storm of criticism, the smug satisfaction on Claire's face began to slowly harden, cracking into confusion. "Claire Simmons," I said coolly. "I thought your trump card would be explosive. I really did. But this? This is all you've got? Let me ask you something. Have you even finished reading the whole story?" Claire, thinking she had the upper hand, cut in with a smirk. "This is your latest work. It's still ongoing. That's why I'm calling you out now. Of course you can deny it now, then go home and quietly rewrite the character, change the plot, and eventually publish it all cleaned up. But those chapters you've already published? They're enough to prove you based that character on my neighbor's sister. Her story made it onto the news. And your story? Every single detail matches. I could have let everything else go. But this time? What's your excuse now? You gonna say it's a coincidence? There are that many coincidences in the world?" And honestly, just listening to the way she listed every detail, point by point like she was cross-checking ledgers, even I had to admit, it sounded convincing. From an outsider's perspective, I admit, it all looked pretty convincing. But for someone like me, a long-time writer, I know better. If you took the 7 dwarfs from Snow White and analyzed them one by one, you'd probably find they share traits with dozens of other characters. The real issue is that the general public lacks the technical knowledge to understand how fiction is constructed. What Claire Simmons accused me of doesn't require any expertise to grasp. But my explanation would only make sense from a writer's perspective. If I tried to defend myself in ordinary terms, I'd fall right into the trap she had carefully laid out. So I opened my mouth and said calmly, "You said the story about your neighbor's sister hit the news in September of last year, right? Well, my story began publishing this March. Seems like a 6-month gap. Just enough time for me to supposedly steal her story as inspiration. But what you don't know is that I started drafting it long before that." Claire's eyes lit up. She'd been waiting for me to say those exact words. "Then prove it," she snapped. "Prove when you started writing it." Her eyes narrowed like a fox ready to pounce. That's when it hit me. My laptop had crashed early this year. And now, I was starting to suspect she'd seen the drafts. She might have snooped through my browser history. Maybe even figured out my pen name that way. And during the repair process, all my drafts, outlines, and character notes were erased. Gone. I had no choice but to start from scratch, over 100,000 words rewritten from memory. I looked at her and said clearly, "Let me make something clear. The character you're referring to, Sylvia Bennett, the one you call the villain? She's not a villain. The ending has been written for months. Claire Simmons, don't underestimate a writer who plots their entire manuscript in advance. See this? All the unpublished chapters. I'm uploading the rest of the 500,000 words right now. I don't need to explain the plot to you. I don't need to defend the character arcs. Readers have eyes. They'll read it. They'll understand it themselves." As Claire stared at me, visibly horrified, I uploaded nearly 100 chapters to the site in under 5 minutes. If what she said was true, that I twisted a real-life victim into a fictional villain, then this would have been the same as publicly destroying myself. But I knew I had never even read the news article about her neighbor's sister. I never took that woman as inspiration. So I wasn't afraid. The so-called uncanny coincidences? Just that, coincidences. And with that, the game was over. Claire had run out of plays, while the cards I had quietly held, each one she thought was harmless, turned out to be aces. She stared at me, eyes wide, lips trembling. How could you do this?" she finally stammered. Just then, there was a loud knock at the door. The guys in hats, as netizens jokingly called them. The police had arrived. The incident had become too massive, and when online defamation crosses legal limits, it becomes a criminal investigation. And this time? The post had been shared over 10 million times. Claire Simmons showed no sign of remorse. As the police led her away, she stomped and screamed, still trying to keep that smug, defiant expression, shouting insults at everyone in the room, one by one. But none of the classmates paid her any attention anymore. After the door closed behind her, the room went silent for a few seconds. Then, as if on cue, everyone stood up, raising their glasses and applauding. To our rider of justice. Claire wasn't ignorant of the law. On the contrary, she knew exactly what she was doing. If her plan had succeeded, she would have gained massive clout, and with her talent for manipulating public opinion, she could have easily landed a job at a media company. Never underestimate the depth of human ambition. For many, profit always comes before morality. Had Claire pulled it off, it would have been a goldmine. And if she failed? She could have walked away unscathed, just call it a misunderstanding, or push all the blame onto the poor neighbor she used as her scapegoat. She thought she had controlled everything perfectly, leaving no trace. But what she didn't anticipate was how thorough police investigations can be. The neighbor, Michelle Lean, came forward and testified. The entire public meltdown at the reunion had been fabricated by Claire from start to finish. Michelle had been a domestic violence survivor, silently suffering for years and desperately seeking help, only to be ignored by everyone around her. She needed visibility. She needed support. And Claire took advantage of that weakness to stage her little drama. She didn't just harm me. She harmed the one person who most needed help. It turns out, Claire used to be an actress and segment producer for a regional reconciliation program. Some of her early episodes had even gained modest traction and respectable viewership. With that record under her belt, Claire believed she'd mastered the art of public manipulation. She was convinced that if she pushed the right emotional buttons, people would naturally take her side. And to be fair, she had her tactics down cold. Throughout the confrontation, it was clear. I wasn't even her real target. The real target was the crowd behind me. She didn't care about me, only about controlling the masses. That was her true weapon. If I hadn't stayed calm, if I hadn't stood my ground, I would have been dragged straight into the mud. But Claire didn't stop at public attacks. She'd tampered with my laptop, damaging a device worth over $10,000, and engaged in online defamation, falsification, and personal insults. Her charges had gone far beyond civil offense. This was now a criminal case. And me? Well, the spotlight Claire had tried to steal ended up shining squarely on me. I had already completed my novel and scheduled regular releases to build engagement over time. Now, the universe handed me an unexpected gift. Even Michelle Lean, the very neighbor at the center of Claire's lie, personally posted a statement clarifying everything. It was all fabricated by Claire Simmons. Eva Harper never based her story on me. The ones who had once gleefully torn me down? They finally fell silent. And those filthy comments they'd left under my story? I didn't delete a single one. Because those stains? They belonged to them, not me.